I couldn't stop staring at the floral arrangement on my kitchen counter. The vibrant colors and sweet fragrance filled the air, a stark contrast to the sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. It was my 65th birthday, but instead of feeling joyful, I felt a familiar sense of dread. "Happy birthday, Mom!" Ethan's voice rang through the phone, warm and cheerful. "Rachel and I wanted to make sure you had something special to brighten up your day." "Thank you, honey," I replied, my voice strained. "It's beautiful. We're so sorry we couldn't be there in person, but we can't wait to see you at Mia's engagement party this weekend." As Ethan continued chatting, my gaze shifted to the other card lying on the counter, a simple envelope bearing Ryan's neat handwriting. Swallowing hard, I opened it to find a generic happy birthday message signed by his wife, Lila. I should have known better than to expect more. Later that evening, I mustered the courage to call Lila and thank her for the card. But the moment she answered, her condescending tone cut through me like a knife. "Hazel, darling," she drawled. "How lovely of you to call." "Thank you for the birthday card, Lila. That was very thoughtful of you." "Well, I certainly couldn't let the day go by unnoticed, could I?" she said with a forced laugh. "Although I must admit I'm surprised you're still around to celebrate another year." My heart sank. "Excuse me?" "You're a disgrace, Hazel. A junior high school dropout at a fancy party. You're an embarrassment to all of us." The words hit me like a slap in the face, and I felt the familiar sting of tears welling up. "What did you say?" "You heard me," she sneered. "You're a poor woman living on Social Security. I don't want anything to do with you." The line went dead, and I was left clutching the phone, my body trembling with a mixture of anger and anguish. How could she be so cruel, and on my birthday, no less? But deep down, I knew this wasn't the first time Lila had belittled me. Her disdain for my humble upbringing and lack of formal education had been simmering for years, a constant source of tension within the family. As I sat alone in my modest home, surrounded by the trappings of a life well lived, I made a silent vow. This time, Lila had gone too far. I would no longer remain a silent spectator as she disrespected and humiliated me. It was time to take a stand and reclaim the dignity I deserved. The weekend of Mia's engagement party arrived, and I found myself standing in the lavish gardens of the family estate, surrounded by perfectly manicured hedges and meticulously arranged floral displays. It was a world far removed from my own, a stark reminder of the gulf that separated my life from that of my wealthy children. As I smoothed the fabric of my simple sundress, a sense of unease washed over me. I knew Lila would be in attendance, and the memory of her cruel words still stung like an open wound. "Hazel, darling," a familiar voice called out, dripping with false sweetness. "You made it." I turned to see Lila sauntering towards me, her designer gown hugging her slim figure in a way that seemed to mock my own modest attire. "Lila," I greeted her, forcing a polite smile. "You look lovely." Her eyes narrowed as she took in my appearance, her lips curling into a disdainful sneer. "Well, isn't that quaint?" Before I could respond, she continued, her words laced with venom. "Really, Hazel, you should have made more of an effort. This is a special occasion after all." I felt my cheeks flush with embarrassment, but I refused to let her see how deeply her words cut. "I'm sure Mia and her fiancé will be thrilled regardless of what I'm wearing." Lila let out a derisive laugh, drawing the attention of nearby guests. "Oh, Hazel, always so naive. Do you really think anyone cares about your presence here? You're nothing but a sad, uneducated relic from a bygone era." My hands balled into fists at my sides, but before I could respond, Ryan appeared, his expression dark. "Lila, that's enough," he said, his voice low and warning. But Lila was undeterred, her cruelty seemingly fueled by an insatiable need to humiliate me. "What's the matter, Ryan?" she taunted. "Can't handle the truth? Your mother is a disgrace, a poor excuse for a woman who couldn't even finish high school." The words hung in the air like a poisonous cloud, and I felt the weight of 1,000 judging eyes upon me. My vision blurred with tears, and I fought the urge to flee, not to escape the humiliation that threatened to consume me. But then a familiar voice cut through the tension, strong and unwavering. "That's enough, Lila," Ethan said, stepping forward with Rachel at his side. "You've gone too far." Lila's eyes widened, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. But before she could respond, Ethan continued, his voice ringing out across the garden. You think you're so superior with your fancy job and designer clothes, he said, shaking his head. But the truth is, you're nothing but a bitter, insecure woman who has to tear others down to feel good about herself. A hush fell over the crowd as Ethan's words sank in, and I saw Lila's face contort with rage. How dare you, she spat, her composure crumbling. But Ethan wasn't finished. You want to know the real truth, Lila? This entire estate, everything you see around you, belongs to our mother. She's the one who made shrewd investments over the years, building a fortune that you could only dream of. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and I saw Lila's eyes widen in disbelief. You're lying, she hissed, but her voice wavered with uncertainty. Ethan shook his head, a small smile playing on his lips. Believe what you want, Lila, but the truth is out, and it's time you showed my mother the respect she deserves. As the guests erupted into murmurs, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, replaced by a surge of pride and vindication. For too long, I had allowed Lila's cruelty to diminish me, but no more. This was my moment, and I would savor every second of it. The murmurs and whispers that followed Ethan's revelation seemed to fade into the background as I watched Lila's face contort with a mixture of rage and disbelief. Her carefully cultivated mask of superiority had cracked, revealing the ugly truth beneath. You're lying, she spat, her eyes darting between Ethan and me. This is some kind of sick joke. But Ethan remained unfazed, his expression one of calm resolve. Believe what you want, Lila, but the truth is out there for anyone who cares to look. Lila opened her mouth to respond, but before she could utter a word, the sound of clinking glass filled the air. All eyes turned towards the raised platform where Mia's fiancé, Jake, stood, a champagne flute in his hand. If I could have everyone's attention, please, he called out, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. As the guests fell silent, Jake's gaze swept over the assembled group, finally settling on Lila. A small smile played on his lips as he raised his glass in a mock toast. I'd like to propose a toast, he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm, to Lila, the epitome of grace and humility. A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd, and I saw Lila's face flush with embarrassment. After all, Jake continued, what could be more admirable than a woman who takes such pride in belittling and humiliating others, especially those who have sacrificed so much for her own comfort and privilege? The words hung in the air, sharp and pointed, and I felt a surge of satisfaction as Lila shifted uncomfortably, her eyes downcast. To Lila, Jake said, raising his glass higher, may her arrogance and cruelty serve as a reminder to us all of the kind of person we should strive never to become. A chorus of laughter and scattered applause filled the air, and I couldn't help but join in, reveling in the sweet taste of vindication. But Lila wasn't one to accept defeat gracefully. With a snarl of rage, she snatched a champagne flute from a nearby tray and hurled it towards Jake, the glass shattering against the platform in a shower of sparkling shards. Gasps of shock rippled through the crowd, and I felt Ryan's hand on my arm, steadying me. How dare you? Lila shrieked, her voice shrill and unhinged. You're all pathetic, groveling at the feet of this uneducated nobody. Her gaze fell on me, her eyes burning with hatred. You think you've won, Hazel? You think you're better than me? You're nothing but a poor, sad excuse for a mother, and I pity your children for having to endure your presence in their lives. The words cut deep, reigniting the familiar sting of shame and inadequacy that Lila had so expertly cultivated over the years. But this time, something was different. This time, I felt a newfound strength, a resolve that had been forged in the fires of her cruelty. Squaring my shoulders, I stepped forward, my gaze locked with hers. You're right, Lila, I said, my voice steady and unwavering. I may not have had the same educational opportunities as you, but I've learned something far more valuable, the importance of kindness, humility, and respect for others. Lila scoffed, but I pressed on, emboldened by the supportive murmurs of the crowd. You see, true wealth isn't measured by the size of your bank account or the designer labels you wear. It's measured by the quality of your character, the depth of your compassion, and the legacy you leave behind. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. And in that regard, Lila, you are the poorest of us all. A hush fell over the garden, broken only by the sound of Lila's ragged breathing. For a moment, I thought she might lash out again, but then her shoulders slumped, and she turned on her heel, disappearing into the crowd without another word. As the guests erupted into applause, I felt a sense of victory wash over me. The battle had been won, and for the first time in my life, I had emerged victorious against the woman who had tormented me for so long. The aftermath of Lila's public humiliation hung heavy in the air, like a thick fog that refused to dissipate. As the guests slowly dispersed, murmuring amongst themselves, I found myself surrounded by a small cluster of family members, their expressions ranging from shock to admiration. "Mom, I'm so sorry," Ryan said, his brow furrowed with concern. "I had no idea Lila was capable of such cruelty." I offered him a gentle smile, reaching out to squeeze his hand. "It's not your fault, dear. Lila has always had a way of hiding her true colors." Ethan stepped forward, his arm draped protectively around Rachel's shoulders. "You handled that situation with such grace and dignity, Mom. I'm proud of you." "Thank you, son," I replied, my heart swelling with gratitude. "But I couldn't have done it without your support." As the others chimed in with words of encouragement and praise, a familiar figure emerged from the crowd, her face etched with a mixture of shame and resolve. "Lila," Ryan said, his voice laced with a combination of sadness and anger. "What you did was inexcusable." Lila flinched, her gaze dropping to the ground. "I know," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "And I'm sorry." The words seemed to hang in the air, their sincerity questionable. But before anyone could respond, Lila lifted her head, her eyes meeting mine with a newfound determination. "Hazel, I owe you a profound apology," she said, her tone surprisingly steady. "For years I've treated you with disrespect and cruelty, and I can't begin to justify my actions." She paused, taking a deep breath. "The truth is, I was jealous of you, of the love and admiration your children have for you, of the strength and resilience you've shown in the face of adversity. I allowed my own insecurities and pettiness to blind me to the remarkable woman you truly are." I blinked, taken aback by the unexpected honesty in her words. But before I could respond, Lila continued, her voice growing stronger with each syllable. "Today, you showed me what true dignity and courage look like, and I was humbled by your grace under fire. You are a far better person than I could ever hope to be, and for that, I am deeply sorry." A hush fell over our small group, the weight of Lila's admission hanging heavily in the air. I searched her eyes for any hint of deception, but found only a rawness and vulnerability that I had never seen before. Finally, I nodded, offering her a small, tentative smile. "Thank you, Lila. Your words mean a lot to me." Lila returned the nod, her shoulders sagging with what seemed like relief. But before she could say anything else, Ryan stepped forward, his expression grim. "Lila, I appreciate your apology, but words aren't enough," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "Your actions today, your cruelty towards my mother, were unforgivable." Lila's eyes widened, her mouth opening to protest, but Ryan held up a hand, silencing her. "I can't continue to stand by and watch you disrespect and humiliate the woman who brought me into this world, who sacrificed so much for our family," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "It's over, Lila. I'm filing for divorce." The words hung in the air like a death knell, and I saw Lila's face crumple, her carefully constructed facade finally shattering. Without another word, she turned and fled, disappearing into the gathering dusk. As the weight of Ryan's decision settled over us, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. While a part of me mourned the dissolution of my son's marriage, a larger part couldn't help but feel vindicated, finally free from the toxic grip of Lila's cruelty. Reaching out, I pulled Ryan into a tight embrace, whispering words of love and support into his ear. In that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, our family would face them together, united and unbreakable. In the days that followed Mia's disastrous engagement party, a palpable tension hung over the family like a thick fog. The once pristine estate felt tainted, its grandeur overshadowed by the weight of Lila's actions and the aftermath of her public humiliation. As I sat in the quiet solitude of my modest home sipping a cup of tea, I found myself replaying the events of that fateful day over and over in my mind. The look of anguish on Ryan's face as he declared his intention to divorce Lila was seared into my memory, a painful reminder of the collateral damage inflicted by her cruelty. A gentle knock at the door jolted me from my reverie, and I rose to answer it, my heart fluttering with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. "Ryan," I breathed, taking in the sight of my eldest son standing on my doorstep, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He offered me a weary smile, his eyes rimmed with fatigue. "Hey, Mom, can I come in?" "Of course, honey," I replied, stepping aside to usher him into the familiar warmth of my living room. As Ryan sank onto the well-worn couch, I studied him carefully, noting the lines of worry etched into his face. It was clear that the events of the past few days had taken a toll on him, both emotionally and physically. "I couldn't stay there," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not after everything that happened." I nodded, understanding the weight of his words. The estate, once a symbol of our family's prosperity, had become a haunting reminder of Lila's viciousness and the fractures she had created within our once tight-knit clan. "You did the right thing, Ryan," I said, reaching out to squeeze his hand reassuringly. "Lila's behavior was unacceptable, and you deserve better." Ryan's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and he nodded, swallowing hard. I never thought it would come to this, you know? I loved her, Mom. Despite everything, a part of me still does." My heart ached for him, for the pain and heartbreak that he was enduring. As a mother, all I wanted was to shield him from the cruelties of the world, to protect him from the kind of hurt that Lila had inflicted upon us all. "I know, sweetheart," I murmured, pulling him into a gentle embrace. "But sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes we have to put our own well-being first, even if it means walking away from someone who can't treat us with the respect and kindness we deserve." Ryan nodded, his body trembling slightly as he fought back tears. In that moment, I saw not the successful businessman or the doting husband he had once been, but a little boy in need of his mother's comfort and guidance. As we sat together, enveloped in the quiet stillness of my living room, I felt a renewed sense of purpose wash over me. This was my chance to be the rock that my son needed, to provide him with the unwavering support and love that had been so sorely lacking in his marriage. Over the next few weeks, Ryan slowly began to rebuild his life, piece by piece. He threw himself into his work, channeling his energy and focus into projects that had once taken a backseat to Lila's demands and expectations. And through it all, I was there, a constant presence by his side, offering a listening ear and a shoulder to lean on whenever he needed it. Meanwhile, the rift between Lila and the rest of the family only seemed to widen. Ethan and Rachel made it clear that they stood firmly in my corner, their loyalty unwavering in the face of Lila's transgressions. Even Mia, who had once idolized her glamorous aunt, began to see her in a new light. Her youthful admiration replaced by a simmering resentment for the way Lila had treated her beloved grandmother. As for Lila herself, she retreated into the shadows, her once vibrant presence reduced to a mere whisper on the fringes of our family gatherings. Occasionally I would catch a glimpse of her, her eyes downcast and her shoulders slumped, a far cry from the haughty woman who had once ruled over us all with an iron fist. And in those fleeting moments, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity for her, a reminder that even the most vile of actions often stem from a place of deep insecurity and pain. But as the months passed, that pity gradually gave way to a sense of triumph and vindication. For too long, I had allowed Lila's cruelty to dictate the narrative of my life, to diminish my sense of self-worth and the love I shared with my children and grandchildren. Now, however, the tables had turned. Lila's mask had been ripped away, exposing the ugliness that lay beneath, and I had emerged from the ashes of her resentment stronger and more resilient than ever before. As I looked towards the future, I knew that there would be challenges and obstacles to overcome, but I also knew that I would face them head-on, surrounded by the unwavering love and support of my family, the true measure of wealth that Lila could never hope to understand. In the months that followed, life seemed to settle into a new rhythm, one that no longer included Lila's toxic presence. Ryan had officially filed for divorce, severing the final ties that bound him to his former wife's cruelty. As for me, I found solace in the newfound closeness with my sons and their families. Ethan and Rachel were constant fixtures in my life, their love and support a balm for the wounds inflicted by Lila's vicious words. Even Mia, once so enamored with her glamorous aunt, had grown to see the true depth of Lila's ugliness. She now regarded me with a newfound respect and admiration, her youthful infatuation replaced by a genuine appreciation for the strength and resilience I had shown in the face of adversity. It was during one of our weekly family dinners that I first caught wind of the rumors swirling around Lila's professional life. Ethan, ever the protective son, had been keeping a watchful eye on her movements, determined to ensure she faced the consequences of her actions. "Word around the office is that Lila's been demoted," he said, his voice low and conspiratorial. "Apparently her little stunt at Mia's engagement party didn't go over too well with the higher-ups." I felt a pang of satisfaction at the news, but quickly pushed it aside, unwilling to stoop to Lila's level of pettiness. "I see," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "Well, actions do have consequences." Ethan nodded, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "That's not all. I've heard whispers about some financial troubles, too. Seems like her lavish lifestyle might have caught up with her." A part of me wanted to revel in Lila's downfall, to savor the sweet taste of revenge. But another, more rational part reminded me that such thoughts were unbecoming, a reflection of the very bitterness that had once consumed Lila herself. As the weeks passed, the rumors only seemed to intensify. Lila's once pristine reputation was quickly unraveling, her fall from grace fueled by her own hubris and arrogance. It was during one of my weekly visits to the local grocery store that I caught my first glimpse of her in months. She was standing in the checkout line, her hair disheveled and her clothing rumpled, a far cry from the polished image she had once so carefully cultivated. For a moment our eyes met, and I saw a flicker of something in her gaze, shame perhaps, or regret. But as quickly as it appeared, it was gone, replaced by a familiar mask of defiance. I nodded curtly in her direction, offering a small, tight-lipped smile before turning away. In that moment, I realized that I no longer harbored any ill will towards Lila. Her actions had spoken for themselves, and the consequences she now faced were of her own making. As I made my way home, my mind couldn't help but wander back to that brief encounter. I thought of the lavish lifestyle Lila had once enjoyed, the designer clothes and expensive cars that had once been the trappings of her success. And yet, in the end, it was all a facade, a carefully constructed illusion that had crumbled under the weight of her own hubris and cruelty. It was a sobering reminder that true wealth lies not in material possessions or social status, but in the quality of one's character and the depth of the relationships we cultivate with those around us. And as I reflected on the unwavering love and support of my family, I knew that in that regard, I was truly the wealthiest woman of all. As the dust settled on the aftermath of Lila's downfall, a newfound sense of unity began to take root within our family. It was as if the toxic cloud that had once hung over us had finally dissipated, allowing us to breathe freely once more. It was during one of our weekly dinners that Ryan broached the subject of the family estate, the very symbol of Lila's cruelty and the catalyst for her public humiliation. "Mom," he said, his voice solemn yet resolute, "I think it's time we did something about the estate." I felt a flicker of apprehension at his words, the memories of that fateful day still fresh in my mind. But before I could respond, Ryan continued, "For too long, we've allowed Lila's actions to cast a shadow over our family's legacy," he said, his gaze sweeping across the table to include Ethan, Rachel, and Mia. "That ends now." Ethan nodded, a look of understanding passing between the brothers. "What did you have in mind?" Ryan took a deep breath, his eyes meeting mine with a newfound determination. "I want to take over the management of the estate," he said firmly. "But not just for our own benefit. I want to restore it to its former glory, to honor the vision and hard work that you put into building it, Mom." I felt a lump form in my throat, my heart swelling with a mixture of pride and gratitude. For so long, I had kept my role in the estate's creation a closely guarded secret, unwilling to draw attention to myself or risk incurring Lila's wrath. But now, with her influence finally broken, I felt a sense of liberation, a freedom to embrace the accomplishments that had once been overshadowed by her cruelty. "Ryan, I don't know what to say," I stammered, my voice thick with emotion. Ethan reached across the table, clasping my hand in his own. "Say yes, Mom," he urged gently. "You've sacrificed so much for this family, and it's time we honored that sacrifice in the way it deserves." I looked around the table, taking in the faces of my children and grandchild, faces that radiated with love and admiration. In that moment, I knew that my decision had already been made. "Yes," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Yes, of course. Let's do this together as a family." A chorus of cheers and applause erupted around the table, and I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, replaced by a sense of purpose and determination. In the weeks that followed, Ryan threw himself into the task of restoring the estate to its former glory. He pored over financial records and blueprints, meticulously planning every aspect of the renovation and restoration process. And through it all, I was there by his side, offering guidance and insight, sharing the stories and memories that had once been silenced by Lila's cruelty. As the work progressed, a sense of excitement began to build within our family. Ethan and Rachel eagerly pitched in, lending their talents and energy to the project, while Mia reveled in the opportunity to be a part of something so deeply rooted in our family's history. It was during one of our weekly planning sessions that Ryan made a suggestion that took me by surprise. "Mom," he said, his eyes shining with a mix of pride and determination, "I think it's time we set the record straight." I furrowed my brow, unsure of his meaning. "What do you mean?" Ryan leaned forward, his gaze intense and unwavering. "I want to hold a press conference, a public event where we can share the true story of this estate. Your story." My heart skipped a beat, a flicker of apprehension flickering within me. For so long, I had shied away from the spotlight, content to let my contributions go unnoticed. But as I looked around the room, taking in the faces of my loved ones, I realized that their support and belief in me were stronger than any fear or insecurity I might harbor. "Okay," I said, nodding slowly. "Let's do it." In the days leading up to the press conference, a flurry of activity consumed our lives. Ryan worked tirelessly to coordinate every detail, ensuring that the event would be a true celebration of our family's resilience and my legacy. And as the day finally arrived, I found myself standing behind a podium, surrounded by the familiar faces of my children and grandchild, their unwavering love and support, a constant source of strength. As the cameras flashed and the reporters eagerly scribbled notes, I took a deep breath and began to tell my story. The tale of a humble woman who had defied the odds, building a fortune through hard work, determination, and a keen eye for opportunity. With each word, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders, the burden of secrecy and shame that had once weighed me down dissipating like a morning fog. And as I spoke, I couldn't help but steal glances at Ryan, Ethan, and the rest of my family, their faces beaming with pride and admiration. In that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, a united front, bound by the unbreakable bonds of love, respect, and a shared legacy that no amount of cruelty or jealousy could ever tarnish. The weeks leading up to my 66th birthday were a whirlwind of activity, as the family rallied together to plan a grand celebration, one that would not only honor the milestone, but also serve as a celebration of our newfound unity and the restoration of the family estate. As I stepped through the ornate gates that led onto the immaculately groomed grounds, I couldn't help but feel a sense of awe wash over me. The once neglected gardens had been meticulously tended to, bursting with vibrant blooms that seemed to radiate a newfound vibrancy. "Mom!" Mia's voice rang out, and I turned to see her hurrying towards me, her face alight with excitement. "You made it!" I chuckled, pulling her into a warm embrace. "Of course, sweetheart. I wouldn't miss this for the world." Mia beamed, taking my hand and leading me further onto the grounds. "Wait until you see what we've done with the place," she gushed. "It's like something out of a fairy tale." And indeed, as we rounded the corner, I was greeted by a sight that took my breath away. The vast lawn had been transformed into a veritable wonderland, with twinkling lights strung between the trees and elegant tables adorned with delicate floral arrangements. "Oh, Mia," I breathed, my eyes drinking in the beauty that surrounded me. "It's absolutely stunning." "We wanted to make sure your birthday was extra special this year," a familiar voice chimed in, and I turned to see Ethan and Rachel approaching, their arms laden with gifts. "After everything you've done for us, for this family, it's the least we could do," Rachel added, her warm smile mirroring the affection in her words. I felt a lump form in my throat, overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and appreciation. Before I could respond, however, the sound of laughter and music filled the air, drawing my attention to the gathering crowd of guests. As I made my way through the throng of well-wishers, exchanging hugs and accepting heartfelt congratulations, I couldn't help but marvel at the transformation that had taken place. Just a year ago, this very estate had been the site of such pain and turmoil, a battleground where Lila's cruelty had threatened to tear our family apart. But now, the air was filled with joy and celebration, the weight of the past lifted by the strength of our love and resilience. It was during the height of the festivities that Ryan took the stage, his face aglow with pride and affection. As he raised his glass in a toast, a hush fell over the crowd, all eyes fixed upon him. "To my incredible mother," he began, his voice ringing out clear and strong. "A woman whose strength, determination, and unwavering love have been the bedrock upon which our family has been built." A chorus of cheers and applause erupted, and I felt my cheeks flush with a mixture of humility and gratitude. "Today, we not only celebrate her birthday," Ryan continued, "but also the triumph of her spirit over adversity, and the legacy she has created for all of us to cherish and carry forward." His gaze swept over the assembled guests, lingering on each member of our family with a warmth that spoke volumes. "So raise your glasses, my friends, and join me in honoring the true matriarch of our family, a woman whose resilience, grace, and unwavering love have inspired us all." As the crowd erupted into a thunderous ovation, I felt tears of joy prick at the corners of my eyes. In that moment, all the pain and heartache of the past seemed to melt away, replaced by a profound sense of gratitude and contentment. Later, as the party wound down and the guests began to disperse, I found myself wandering the grounds, basking in the tranquility of the evening. It was then that Rachel approached, cradling a small bundle in her arms. "Mom," she said softly, her eyes shining with a mix of joy and pride, "I'd like you to meet your newest grandchild." As I peered down at the tiny face nestled against Rachel's chest, a wave of emotion washed over me. This precious new life, a symbol of hope and renewal, was a testament to the enduring strength of our family, a strength that had been forged in the fires of adversity and tempered by the bonds of unconditional love. Reaching out, I gently traced the curve of the baby's cheek, marveling at the soft perfection of their skin. "Hello, little one," I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. "Welcome to the family." In that moment, as I held my grandchild close, surrounded by the love and warmth of my family, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, united, resilient, and unbreakable. For in the end, that was the true legacy I hoped to leave behind. Not one of material wealth or fleeting success, but of love, courage, and the unwavering belief that even in the darkest of times, the light of hope and redemption can never be extinguished.